What's up, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Ryan, and we're here for another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. This time, I'm excited, as I'm always am. But this time, we are going to get into an odd deck. We always get into odd decks, but this one's extra odd. It is an Aerodactyl focused deck. It's a deck that I think just became even usable, really, despite Aerodactyl being out for a while because of Hilda. So I'm going to go into each card in the deck, why I included it, then we'll go over the strategy, strengths, and weaknesses of the deck, and finally some other cards to consider swapping in. So let's do it. Alright, now the deck, as I mentioned, is based around Aerodactyl, and I mean, man, this art, I actually just am noticing, like, it kind of sucks sometimes when you don't get those full arts and they're just like really cool. I mean, this is some really cool art, you gotta say. But anyway, Aerodactyl. Okay, so this came out in the 151 set. Seems like forever ago, right? So it's 130 HP as a stage 1 Pokemon, so not great even for a 1-prizer, but that's alright. It has Glide for 30, but really what we're going to be using is Devolution Ray. So if your opponent's active Pokemon is an evolved Pokemon, devolve it by placing the highest stage evolution card on it into your opponent's hand. So basically we're devolving. So rest in peace, Pokemon have used rare candy for stage 2s. Pretty much nothing that goes up to a stage 2 that I can remember has 100 HP. So this is going to KO a lot of stuff, and so it makes it really fun. The really tough part about it is that it evolves from, oh well, we have to go way into our stuff for that. It evolves from the Antique Old Amber. So Antique Old Amber is an item card technically. It does have obviously 60 HP. It does have Amber Protection, prevent all effects of your opponent's Pokemon's abilities done to this Pokemon. So that is nice. It can't be affected by special conditions. It can't retreat. Then you can discard it from play at any time, but we do not ever want to discard from play, considering that we've got 4 of these in the deck, and since it is an item card and it is not a supporter card, at least I can't think of any way that we can recur this card. I think there may be ways with like some ace specs, but we're not doing that. Okay, so that's it. That's our attacker, so that's what we're going around. So then from there, we've just got a couple other randoms, right? We've got Fezandipiti. I've got 2 Fezandipitis. Usually I only put 1, but because there's no recursion for the Amber, I just decided to go with 0 recursion, period, for the whole deck. So that means I want 2 Fezandipiti so that if my opponent knocks out 1, I at least have 1 more that I can get out there unless it's prized. Okay, then from there, my draw engine is going to be Dunsparce and Dudunsparce. Just kind of feels like it fits here, right? With everything going on in the deck, it's a pretty good draw engine. Obviously, runaway draw, we can draw 3 and then shuffle this Pokemon back in, and all attached cards too, which is kind of nice. So that's kind of that in terms of the Pokemon. So let's get right into the supporters. Nest Ball, I did only include 3 Nest Balls because really we're only using it on Fezandipiti and the Dunsparce. If you want to throw 4 in there, be my guest. Pokégear 3.0, I feel like this card is really crucial to the deck because depending on what turn we're on, we're going to want to pull different trainer cards, right? Or different supporter cards specifically, and we'll talk about what those are in a second. Ultra Ball, 3 Ultra Balls. I always love my 3. Okay, now Calamitous Snowy Mountain, I put 3 of these in as well. I think it's just a nice one, especially for those Pokemon, because your opponent's not always going to be using rare candies. So there are a good amount of stage 1 Pokemon that do have 110, 120 HP. So the Calamitous Snowy Mountain is a pretty good way of just increasing that damage higher. Or even like the EXs and stuff like that, like basic EXs that don't evolve. This can help us take them out in 1 or 2 turns compared to even more because we're only dealing 100 damage. So I think it's a pretty good one. We don't see water a ton. Obviously, think about the fact that if you're attaching to others, they're going to take damage, but really we don't have to worry because our Old Amber is technically not a Pokemon, so we really only have to worry about Dunsparce, which are we ever really attaching energies? Occasionally, but then he's going to go back into the deck anyway, so we're pretty golden in that regard. Okay, Arven. Now, Arven's one that we really need in this deck, so I'm going 4 of, and another reason why we want the Pokégear to be able to snack him when we want, because this is the only way that we can pull out those old Ambers, right? We can't use Nest Balls, Poffins, or anything to pull Pokemon for those old Ambers because there's no way, because they're item cards. So Arven lets us pull that item card straight from the deck, and a tool card, which you do see in the list, TM Evolution. We do want to be able to pull that or just kind of use it as discard fodder. Boss's Orders, I've got 3. This is one of the few times it's another card I'd consider going to 4 of, but just not really sure what to reduce by 1, because Boss's Orders is pretty good in this deck to where we want to get our opponents either stage 2 Pokemon out there or just get whatever we need to get to KO them. Okay, now Hilda is what, in my opinion, really makes this deck viable, and Hilda is just becoming a really crazy card for me. Searching your deck for an evolution Pokemon and an energy card, reveal, put into your hand, shuffle your deck. We can get Evo, we can get Aerodactyl, so that's where the other Pokégear, right? We've already got our old Amber. I don't have a Hilda in hand. Hopefully I can grab one with the Pokégear and grab an Aerodactyl for free without having to use an Ultra Ball, and then an energy card. And because of this too, I'm also just playing purely special energies because we can grab a special energy with this. So Hilda's a really good card as well. I'm going 4 of there. And then Iono, maybe we've got everything we need on our bench. Just Iono our opponent's hand or reset our hand. So I'm going it with Iono, 4 of in here. This is the one where maybe you want to swap, just go down to 3 Ionos and a bosses, but I feel like it's pretty good. I'm going to stick with that. Kieran, I'm going 3 of. Now, something interesting about Kieran to think about is that I usually don't need to use the switch. I prefer the 30 more damage. I have used the switch when I need to maybe get an old Amber out that my opponent bossed up, or Fezandipiti without wasting an energy, but the 30 more damage to opponent's active EX or V, which we don't see anymore, is awesome because this does, remember what this does, damage before we pull the evolution off, Aerodactyl, right? So if you've got your Aerodactyl and active and your opponent has an EX, it's going to hit for 130 and then devolve. So this has helped me one-shot some things that do have that staged 1 Pokemon under that do have over 100 HP. So it's really nice. I really like Kieran in this deck. Okay, then we've got the TM Evolution, which I talked about. I went with 3 of in this deck. Okay, now we've got the energies. So these are really fun. I wanted 10 energies, so I went with 4 Jet Energy as a 4 of. This is just another good way to help me retreat when needed and just throw that Aerodactyl straight into active. Legacy Energy is the A spec I went with, and just a really cool one. We can pull it with Hilda. There hasn't been a really reliable way of pulling Legacy Energy before Hilda. Again, at least that I can think of. There might be. I just don't remember. So anyway, as long as this card is attached to Pokemon, it provides every energy but only 1. Doesn't really matter. Our Aerodactyl doesn't need any specific energies. And if the Pokemon is knocked out from damage, they take 1 fewer prize cards. So that is super cool. Basically, they're going to knock out our Aerodactyl and get 0 prizes for that. Just really cool. Okay, Spiky Energy as the other one I'm going 4 of here, and so basically when they get damaged, when they damage the Pokemon it's attached to, they're going to take 2 damage counters. So I'm just really trying to find any ways that I can of like a cheap way of dealing damage, right? So this is going to do 20. So another way, if I'm not using Kieran and that stage 1 is on there, this has like saved me matches many times because they're going to hit me, take some damage, and next turn my Aerodactyl comes in, devolves them to a stage 1, and it's just enough damage, or maybe 10 over to knock them out. Because a lot of times, like I said, you're going to be short 10 or 20 damage for that knockout when you're devolving, and this really saves it. Or sometimes you've got those 240 HP Pokemon, so now you're going to be able to do 240. It's really nice. I like it. Therapeutic, honestly, there's probably a better energy to go with over Therapeutic. I did like the fact that I can't be asleep, confused, paralyzed. I just chose anyone. You can really throw in any other special energy you want as a slot, or if you want to go down to 9 and go that route, but I think 10 is a good sweet spot here. And the strategy is pretty straightforward for this deck. Again, evolve your Aerodactyls, and not just one. Obviously, you want to have as many on your bench as possible, and they do take 2 energy, so you want to be loading them up with energies, which is tougher than it seems. There are a lot of times where I may have to sacrifice a Dunsparce or maybe put my Fezandipiti inactive and hope it doesn't get knocked out, because it takes 2 turns to get this bad boy ready. But he only has 130 HP, so if your opponent gets going and they can just keep attacking every turn, and they don't even need that crazy of an attack, sometimes you're going to have turns where your next Aerodactyl is just not ready to go yet, so you're going to have to make a decision on who's getting knocked out. But remember, it's not the worst thing in the world. You know, this is a single prize deck. You do have your Legacy Energy, but also remember that when you're knocking out your opponent's Pokemon, you're only taking 1 prize for that evolution. So that's something to really think about as well, that can kind of come back as like, you're not only have single prizers, but you also are only taking single prizes for the most part. I think the key here though is that you're hoping to just knock your opponent out faster than they can go, and a lot of these stage 2 Pokemon rely on rare candies, so at some point they're going to just run out of rare candies and have to slow things down to get that stage 2. We're in a really big stage 2 meta right now, right? I mean, we've got Gardevoir, we've got Charizard, we've got Dragapult, you know, so these are all stage 2s that if you can slow your opponent down from evolving, that's going to really mess them up. And then really you're thinning your deck with your Dunsparce and Dudunsparce, so that, you know, as you go later and later, you have an easier chance of drawing that Dunsparce back, throwing it out there, and then just getting rid of cards you don't need, because at the end of the game, you're really going to be wanting to see those boss's orders to boss up the specific Pokemon to take them out with the devolution ray. A lot of times they may not even be those evolutions, so really kind of let your opponent have their bench sometimes and go from, like for example, Monkey Dories, you know, those are 110 HP, so maybe don't want to mess with them. So kind of think about a lot of things, but there are other ones that are just going to sit on their bench that you can boss up late game and get that last prize card, whether it's an evolution Pokemon or not, right? The strength is it can one-shot most evolution Pokemon, right? Because we're getting them back down to basics. If they use the rare candy, or if they're a stage 1, we're usually going to knock them out, right? So that's pretty cool. We do have a solid draw engine with the Dunsparce, you know, especially later on. There's a lot of ways to be able to snag it, right? Like even with Hilda, you can grab a Dunsparce if you need that over the Aerodactyl if you're already ready to go. And then because we're a single prizer, you get that Fezandipiti on your bench, you're going to be drawing 3 almost every turn. So it makes for a very consistent deck. You know, this is something I really like, is consistency, and sometimes rogue decks don't have them. This one I find is really consistent. We've got a lot of 3 and 4 ofs, and a lot of ways to really grab specifically what we need. The weakness is you're going to mulligan a lot sometimes. Remember, we've got 3 Dunsparce and 2 Fezandipiti for a total of 5 basic Pokemon. I once had my opponent draw 10 more cards, and that's rough. So you're going to want to see those Ionos if you get a bunch of mulligans, just to get your opponent down in terms of their hand. So this can mulligan a lot. There's also no way to get your Amber recurred. You know, you've got 4 of them. And remember, I mean, this is a single prize deck, so you can't get more than 4 Aerodactyls out there. In fact, sometimes that Old Amber is going to be your second to last or last prize card, and you're going to be sitting there like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do here? So that's something to think about. You know, you want to really go as quickly as possible with this deck, knowing that you don't have a lot of Ambers that you can grab back. And then the other weaknesses is just opponents who are focusing on using basic EXs. You know, EXs are tough because they can a lot of times hit for more than 130 easily, but you're going to take 2, even 3 turns sometimes to knock them out when they've got 200 plus HP. So it makes it tough. And we've got plenty of other cards to consider in this deck. A couple of them kind of themed as the Hero's Cape. Maybe instead of taking one less prize card, you want to make it to where it's just one more turn to knock out your opponent, your Pokemon. So Hero's Cape is something to think about. We can pull it with Arven. It'll get it to 230 HP. But that's where I'm like, is that really going to help us out that much? Like 230 is still oftentimes going to get one shot. I think maybe if you can get this like really ASAP, you may be able to take advantage, but I prefer the just one prize, you know, just going for one less prize card with the energy, even though it can come back to haunt us. Another one to think about would be the Luxurious Cape, right? Our Aerodactyl doesn't have a rule box, and considering the fact that we only have 4 Aerodactyls, maybe for your last 2 or something that you're throwing out there, or at some point you just throw a cape on it and hope that now it does take 2 shots to take out. So this one actually is one that I may want to think about finding a way into the deck. Then we have Maximum Belt, kind of similar ideas, just helping us knock out our opponent's Pokemon easier. I mean, this plus a Kieran is going to make you hit for 180 now. Is that a lot more? Maybe, maybe not. I don't like Maximum Belt, considering you're probably only going to use this for one turn before we get knocked out. So, probably not. Okay, Prime Catcher, another good one. I mean, Prime Catcher, you should always really think about putting into any deck. Should be your top A-spec consideration. This one, I don't really like it here. I think the energy works a little bit better. I'd probably consider the Hero's Cape over it, just because, you know, we've got the bosses, and a lot of times your opponent is going to have the Pokemon you want inactive anyway, because what you're trying to do is devolve their attackers and KO them anyway. So there's not a big reason we need to be swapping too much. So I think we're good with just bosses. Secret Box is one I would think about. You know, this one really helps us get a few things. And we've got pretty much everything in there. You know, we've got the tool, we've got a supporter, we've got a stadium. So, and an item card, obviously, and the item card is probably going to be your Amber. So this one is one to really consider. I just don't feel like we have a ton of room for discard here, and we've got a discard 3, so that one can be rough, is why I haven't tested it though, but just in theory, I don't necessarily like the discard. On the other hand, the only other really non-A-spec except for the Luxurious Cape I think about would be Turo's scenario. I mean, let's say maybe they only hit you for 100 or 100 something to your Aerodactyl. You can just return him to hand. Oh wait, actually it probably wouldn't work well on your Aerodactyl because you're going to discard all cards attached. And well, no, it's not attached. Yeah, I don't think you would discard the Old Amber, right? Because it's not attached, it's stacked. Obviously, the energies and tools. So anyway, I'm thinking aloud here. This one might work. Really, the other idea would be to get your Fezandipiti without having to waste an energy on a retreat. So this one's one to think about. I'm not sure really how good it is in the deck, but, you know, there we go. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you stay tuned for next week, where we're going to take this deck into action on Pokemon TCG Live. Now, if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button and become part of the Hawks Nest. We're a fearless flock of fabulous folks who love to do what we love. And we are really close to 150 subs, so let's keep this going. Let's get these subs. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Share it with one of your Pokemon friends, a fellow trainer. Tell them, you know what, this guy, Ryan the Rybrid, makes some pretty cool rogue decks. I've got rogue decks coming every week, so, you know, let's keep it going. So, anyway, until then, we're going to see you next time.